Ebusia for ensamono ai bebre ewo maga nemu. Adichin bia nensam for beto yepon so. Plot 2 media mo amunim senya me betina hase a. O memu nsama Äy3ka ena me de bro na so nye bietie. Ne wahu ne ekoso wiase afana ene Ghana afenina. Yebeji bre ne ekopim ye Økudzeto Ablakwa akache. Ene ekopim ho mo a ene NDC supporters eno mubu afuni. Omo ni asoje. Just almost someone show mo ya ye mistake. Big mistake. Na ni nani say enye NDC supporters in penifo bi mo eno mo yo madwe se omo ko na omo de omo asama akoto eye ye nyina ye nuabe ma anaso se ye papa Økudzeto Ablakwa enim ni enim se Økudzeto Ablakwa de ono de o se o ma Ghana de ono eno ka no kre ono ene ye bibia na MPP aban ne wo so no yenim se edu bebi no Økudzeto Ablakwa na nkasa de betu dwa se MPP abane sa wo pese okohia wo MPs ni ade nam eya ade ese wuchie sika ene wubu kitu wo mo ni ade eye Økudzeto Ablakwa ya de betu abonten nsam no beye bebre NDC for no mo ba omo preset 2024 mo ba power omo de betu dwa se omo senyame boane so mo ba power eya ade omo be serve omo ma Ghana ene omo peso asofo che se omo ma bibia ehia omo enyo omumpu no mbetina ase no echeso omumpe search for mind de mo aba ne na so ono akasa be runs ekobisa obibia na ehia na ni ade na yeto abawie ye echese ndisi abanya anya ye mema omo post ni ade ende ni omo ye de esewani na eno ene ndisi supporters omo kopiem ye Økudzeto Ablakwa enim no mkopie n'enimu no nka ya de nka eye Økudzeto Ablakwa nkone omo ekasa kekempo yi omo anu anaso okaso okobe bi no dabio wanya ne sa eno ani se papai okowretina ne ka mu no ka che ne driver se driver ti aso ne yanko no yesa no na ni si supporters omo si nyanhwe ni ye ya ne ebetu ya de no Økudzeto Ablakwa da ban ena wo start say obi pese obehu obuka appointment to wo eye da ban na nye wa na wo so bo be serve wo nation wo be serve wo ma Ghana wo de nyoma betutu na akwemu ne esesa wo ye bia na wo be ya aboa o ma Ghana na ene de ba ne sei ena chese emuka appointment ntino wo twa for yeso akwei ene NDC supporters yo moti breda endie ebusia for enke se medi odu ne betre dem but bibi ntino me san tumi anka audio no but yanka se ebetie nkomotwetwe bi eche se ekọọso na iwia asanso aba abedu ho nkomo NDC supporter ni ba akọkyere wo ne Twitter page yenko tie mu nsam ni iwia yetie nia omo keka kire ye Økudzeto Ablakwa insam no ai bebre owo maka ne mo plot 2 media say
book an appointment with him. Didn't he answer an oath to serve the Ghanaian people at all times? We no questions or man as he be so Økudzeto Ablakwa Økudzeto what didn't see I can tell say at all times. All means all, whether it's at your convenience or it's at your inconvenience, you are going to make time to serve the good people of Ghana. Then na mpoye NDC fo ya ba honoma hwenungwasia waguyi hwedwa wada ne de akyere aye omo ye pa so Økudzeto Ablakwa mpoye free Volta region tidal waves ya eba eseye dan NPP time ye tinsem aka ye de evom ni de anim o kan ya ma wiase nyina ti se mpo NPP fo na emfa ye ho tiro ma boye ya ukrom fo ya bampo se ya no ba be kasa enka tie ye mpo ne passing bi kachire Økudzeto enfi wo mo so mu yinipa ayure ho omi ehwe video no na afi so Samuel abugina po ene ye wanfa ne ho anche ne koro John do mani mahama yanko ne yanko
how do I get an appointment and come to the office? How do I get an appointment and come to the office?
Then Mahama has formed. He has formed arguably one of the biggest or largest governments in the history of our country as it relates to the cost on the national exchequer. Why do I say this? Take for example, the president has appointed Dr. Valerie Sawyer as senior presidential advisor in charge of government affairs. Her rank is a cabinet minister who doubles as a member of parliament. So her salary, her emolument, conditions of service, everything to do with her office is at the same rank as a cabinet minister who doubles as a member of parliament. The Speaker, he's appointed a presidential advisor on economy, appointed presidential advisor for 24-hour economy, presidential advisor in special aid to the president, presidential advisor on national anti-corruption program, presidential advisor on diaspora affairs. Mr. Speaker, he goes on to appoint presidential advisor, presidential staffer, and special aid to the vice president, presidential staffer for Black Star Experience, and then presidential staffer for diaspora affairs. Mr. Speaker, then he goes ahead to appoint 5 policy advisors to the vice president. Mr. Speaker, he tells the country that he's appointed a minister in charge of agribusiness, and yet he's appointed director at the presidency in charge of agriculture and agribusiness. My good friend Peter Buama Otukono. Mr. Speaker, he says he will not appoint deputy regional ministers, and he appoints 16 presidential staffers in charge of the 16 regions of our country. Mr. Speaker, I want to submit that these presidential staffers in charge of the 16 regions of our country, in essence, as it relates to the cost on the national exchequer, are in fact, indeed, and in substance, deputy ministers of state. Mr. Speaker, he then appoints, Mr. Speaker, listen carefully, please. Mr. Speaker, he then appoints 1 presidential advisor on media, 4 directors of communication at the office of the president, 5 deputy directors of communication, 2 communication specialists, 5 technical communication assistants, 1 media aide, 1 assistant media liaison officer, 1 communications consultant. I've done the mathematics, and I want to submit. I've done the mathematics that I want to submit, and I do this not from a partisan lens, but I do this as somebody who had the privilege and honor to serve as Deputy Chief of Staff. I know how it works. In terms of the cost on the national exchequer, the President has appointed 100 ministers and deputy ministers. The President has established a Ministry of Youth Development. I want to refer the House and my good friend, Honorable, I will tender all of this, Mr. Speaker. I will tender this. I will tender it. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable James Agalga, my very good friend, has talked about how the MPP government terminated some appointments. Mr. Speaker, assuming without admitting that even happened, shouldn't our governance move forward? Shouldn't we have good governance? And indeed, when we promise resetting, what does that mean? But Mr. Speaker, more importantly, may I refer the House, Mr. Speaker, may I refer the House to Article 191 of our national constitution, which states, and I quote, "A member of the public services shall not be dismissed or removed from office or reduced in rank or otherwise punished without just cause," end quotes. Mr. Speaker, we are building a nation, and there are hundreds and thousands of people out there who have lost their jobs. I think our friends from the other side, the Honorable James Agaga, should join us to appeal to the President, just as he took an oath, Mr. Speaker, on the 2nd schedule of our national constitution, where he said, and I quote, "to protect and defend the Constitution of the Republic of Ghana," end quote. Article 191 is a provision of the Constitution of Ghana, and the President is enjoined to indeed defend and protect this provision of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, the President, in the same schedule, swore an oath to do justice to all manner of persons. Some of these people whose appointments have been terminated, some are NDC members, Mr. Speaker. Some are MPP members. Some are non-partisan. Some don't even know what happens in politics. And yet, a president who says he'll be father for all has terminated the appointment. When President Mahama was leaving office, Mr. Speaker, he appointed Mr. Joseph Whittal as the Commissioner for Shraj. He appointed Joseph Nkrumah as Chairman of NCCE. On 23rd December 2016, he appointed Daniel Domevilo as Auditor General. Mr. Speaker, it is not Abu Jinapor, or it is not the minority. It's not the minority, Mr. Speaker, who is giving the president names. No, Mr. Speaker, when you go out there on the streets, it's the Ghanaian youth who are talking about that. That the president promised to create jobs, and yet he's come, and the talk on the street is that Mahama Bako, terminations, baby. Mr. Speaker, and that is why they have named him. We haven't named him. The minority hasn't named him. They have named him Terminator number 1. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, we call on the president to rise up to the occasion, to jettison the promises, and Mr. Speaker, and honor his commitments of providing you for the Ghanaian people. What we heard on 27th was a message of lamentations and not a State of the Nation address. Mr. Speaker, thank you for the attention.
Honorable members, we now listen to Honorable Gideon Boaku.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to the address that was presented to this House by the President. And Mr. Speaker, my good friend and classmate, the Honorable Felix Oposukwache, made reference to what Professor Naafoli Sekefio said. And I also want to reference Professor Naafoli Sekefio. She said in one of her books that don't tempt me because I don't have the power to resist temptation. The honorable member has gone on a path of putting out some information and data in his attempt to rationalize what we describe as lamentations by the president, and in so doing, some misleading data have been put out. Mr. Speaker, it is important to establish that no government can run the full hog of his or her term without having to deal with some arrears in payments, some unfulfilled promises, and even in some cases, things that were not promised are delivered. But at the end of the day, analysts and scholars have given us indicators that measure whether or not the overall performance was good, moderate, or it was bad. And that analysis is akin to what a physician will do on a patient. You may walk to the hospital as very healthy, but a doctor through laboratory test is able to tell you because of the level of your temperature, you have headache. And this is what the economists have done for us. And Mr. Speaker, I put this into context